Good evening, everybody. Walter McKenzie. This is our July 28th. Don't know where July went. Town Hall on new roles and new rules for in the transformation of education. Our second town hall of the month. Um, as I always say at the start of this, these town halls are a safe place for educators to come together. We are nonpartisan. We do not entertain conspiracy theories. We are not alarmist. We deal in facts, and we build constructive ideas on how to lead education forward. Our commitment to you, we will not publish, share, or mention you by name or any other identifiable information in supporting your voice as you advocate for public education. The EDInfluencer Advocacy Microcredentials, we now have 4 live. Educators as Influencers, Education as a Democratic Institution, very timely. Federal education programs, almost as timely. Supporting legislation for those of us who are gearing up to speak up for those things that we know are important. And 2 new ones coming out in August, advocating for policy and funding for education. So spot on, great stuff, all generated by worthy educators like yourself. So jump in when you can. The address is just theworthyeducator.com, worthyeducator.com/events. All right. In phase 1 and 2 of our roadmap work, we established education transformed has to have community at the center of schools, students as their own independent learning agents, teachers as guides and coaches, and personalized learning from learner profiles to mission statements to a complete pathway for each learner to be able to realize their own educational career. Our living document is being built in real time. You can add your voice at the worthyeducator.com roadmap. There's both a PDF summary of phase 1 and phase 2 and Google Doc versions, so you can add your comments and jump in there. We've had some great additions and revisions over the last month, so do not be shy. Jump in there and give us your best. We're here not to reference the way things are, we all agree and understand the way things are, or to promote specific products and services. We're here to envision a new future for teaching and learning, the way worthy educators envision that it should be. We have with us 5 veteran educators who have established themselves as leaders in education. You may know them from their other work with the Worthy Educator and certainly from the amazing work they're doing in their own right, in their day jobs and beyond. Apryl Taylor is a social studies program specialist for the Orange County Public Schools in Orlando, Florida. Her passion is helping educators find joy as they make a difference through their work. Apryl, it's so good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Yes. Benita C. Gordon is the founder of the Microlearn Hub and the host of the Global Education Concierge podcast. She's a strong voice for finding paths forward in this era of disruption. Benita, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Chaunté Garrett is the CEO of Empowering Learners and Leaders to Excel and an advocate for empowering teachers and students with holistic, data-driven approaches to learning and assessment. Chaunté, welcome. Always good to have you.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
Kathleen McClaskey, CEO of Empower the Learner, founder of Make Learning Personal, and a leader in helping each student be their own best advocate for their education and for their future. Kathleen, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me again, Walter.
And John Schembari, a New York, New Jersey-based education management consultant with a long career in education and the host of the Have a Life Teaching podcast. John has a clear vision for educators to embrace AI in their work and in student learning. Matter of fact, he has a webinar coming up on Wednesday night on teacher-facing uses of AI. So if you like what you hear tonight, join us Wednesday night. John, glad you can make it. Welcome.
Thank you, Walter. Glad to be here.
All right, so I just spent all this time framing this. Enough from me. Let's jump right in. When you hear what I'm describing, the community at the center, students as their own best advocates, teachers as guides and coaches, and personalized learning framing the whole thing, what tools and practices and processes will help make this possible in the future?
I could kick it off, Walter.
Please.
And then if anyone would like to add on to it, I think there are 3 things we have to consider in education because We don't know what future jobs hold. Technology is exponentially evolving in a way that might or might not be sustainable. So we don't really have control over specifics of what the future brings. But I think what society is showing us is, as educators, we need to think about, and this relates to what you were saying, Walter, empowering our learners to be self-advocates and agents of their own learning. We have to really truly engage students in that learning, figure out ways to make it relevant for them as well, in terms of those real world connections, making them problem solvers or helping them to see that they're problem solvers.
Thank you, John.
Well, I'd like to sort of dive in on this whole piece around agency and self-advocacy and how important that is. And
Yes.
that really actually needs to be sort of our focus in the classroom, is how do we actually get kids to understand who they are as learners? How do we help them develop agency in their learning? And really, how do we help them to become self-advocates? And most important is for them to truly understand and to be able to talk about the strengths and challenges in their learning. That's something we sort of, kids actually keep kind of quiet about all that stuff. And we have to really find vehicles in the classroom to help them talk about that so that we can really create a community of learners in the classroom as well as in the school, that everyone is seen and heard and valued. And how you do that is to be able to have that, have kids be able to step out and to be able to talk about these things in a way that it's okay. Right. And
So true, Kathleen. And when you say that, because you're such a proponent for this, and I don't think anyone on this panel is going to say anything that anyone else disagrees with. But if you could just wave a magic wand, if you could, flash forward 5 years, you've waved your magic wand. What are the things, and I don't just mean you, Kathleen, but all of you, what are the things that would just immediately be changed that would either free up kids to be able to do this, or teachers to have the skills and the confidence and the support to be able to do this, or anything else systemically that you really, in your heart of hearts, just from the work you do every day, you'd really like to see somehow transformed? Where do you start with that? Easy question, I know. You could just could knock it off in 5 minutes and be done, but yeah.
So I'm always going to say this.
Yes.
You have to start with how we're educating the educators.
Thank you.
We have to start there. We know that the tradition, like I can only speak for myself. I went through college. I have an English degree. I took my education classes in undergrad. I did not do student teaching, and I went straight into the classroom. And my mentors from elementary teachers when I was elementary and middle school teachers when I was in middle school were amazing. And they really were like, look, you have to give wait time, but wait time looks like this. You need to change it up. Like you can't read the room. Like that was one of the first things my teacher told me. She was like, read the room. If everybody has a puzzled look, it's you, not them. Like if everyone failed the test, it's you, not them. And change the assessment. So I think we have to really go back and look at, and even if we're doing teacher alternatives to certification programs, even those programs, how are we training the educators to become facilitators of learning, not to control the room? And I think that goes back to Kathleen and John, where it's giving agency, it's empowering our students to learning. They're taking ownership of that learning. And then we can fast forward to the future and say, okay, look, I'm a facilitator of learning. Like I won't even use the word teaching anymore. I'm a facilitator of learning. I'm a guide into making sure you have access to the things you need to learn and to be creative. And especially what John said, like, we're looking at jobs now that we didn't have 10 years ago. And we will be looking at jobs 10 years. We don't even know what the 10 years of 2 years, let's just be real. 2 years from now, we don't know the types of jobs our students will have. So it has to go back to that foundation of critical thinking. Teach a step back. allowing them to, it's okay for them to struggle a little bit, let them struggle. And then allowing the teachers to understand that we don't have to hover and we don't have to fix it and we don't have to know the answer.
Amen. And you know, this has just been such a perfect storm between disruptive technologies and disruptive shifts in power in government and even here in the profession, that if there's ever been a time where we can start to say, let's change this up, let's ask different questions, let's find a new way forward that's going to actually reflect society and the workplace that and the community that kids are going to be living in as adults. Chaunté, you look like you're ready to talk there. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I'm really like sitting with and being reflective and processing
Always.
back to your,
Always.
well, you know me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we've been doing this a long time.
Oh yeah.
In Benita in April,
Yep.
right? And this idea of community at the center, right? And I'm thinking about what our post-pandemic students are experiencing as community, right? So many of us, as well as of them, are finding community through technology, right? Which, 5 years ago, we would have never have really envisioned our community really sitting in our phones or in our tablets. It was a means of communication, but really and authentically having community within, through our devices, right? So I'm wondering, how are we using devices within our classrooms to help to build the community literacy, right? And technology is a literacy tool, right?
Yep.
Our kids have to have digital literacy within this era, this iteration of education.
Yep.
Right. It is a skill that they have to have.
Yeah.
And also, I'm thinking about this idea of community at the center as well, because we're also thinking about this process of collaboration in classrooms. And we're talking about the students' agency. We're talking about the teachers as facilitators. We're talking about the students leading their own learning. And it's really, and there was a video I posted today, thinking about how we're moving forward, right? Now that we have those funds back and it's go time, it's August, right? Because July's gone. So it's August and this is really crunch time with getting schools open. So, and Walter, you know me, right? I'm not about reimagining school. I'm about imagining school.
Exactly.
Let's imagine school.
There you go.
So, one of the things I tried with the leaders I worked with this past school year, I called it the flip walkthrough. And so instead of walking around and whispering to kids, what are you working on? What are you learning? With the teachers' comfort and permission, I started allowing students to teach me, like at the board, like help me, tell me how I'm supposed to do this, walk me through this. And teachers and students are becoming the teachers of the content with my knowledge, with my limits. So I am able to facilitate them, and the teacher and I are allowed to come alongside of them and allowing them to express their learning, extend their learning. And so it's a model for myself and the teacher, but they're also helping each other out in the process.
Yes.
Right. So, we're building community, right? We're facilitating learning. We are, right, communities at the center because they're helping each other out.
Yep.
Right. And we are assessing the students' learning, the teachers seeing the gaps in what the students know and what they don't know. They're building on their own foundations.
Yes.
They're learning from each other. Right. We're having fun too. It was a lot of fun.
Hey.
In the walkthroughs. And so it's just kind of like, so how can we build off of that to imagine education differently? Because there is something that has to happen different, right? As we are keeping up and moving forward and progressing through these next phases, and like I said, roadmap 2030, what can be different so we can finally end these conversations and close some of these gaps?
Yes.
And get our students to where we really, really need to see them be. And they are confidently prepared for what their next is that we can't even see yet.
Amen. So well said. Apryl, we haven't heard from you. What does this look like from a social studies lens when you hear all this?
I think one of the things that I've noticed in social studies with these new rules, we have a lot of legislation that specifically pertains to social studies. We have a lot of teachers feeling frustrations that are preventing them from teaching authentically and collaborating with each other. They're hearing a lot more no than they are yes. So it resonates me what Ramona put in the chat about elevating the power of their voices. Chaunté talking about community. I think teacher burnout is not going to go away. And as things keep changing and as the rules keep changing, the more we can involve teachers in creating those rules and establishing those expectations for themselves and together, can maybe help with some of that burnout. So they feel more empowered in what they're doing and that the people next to them have their back instead of that they're coming at their back, you know?
I love that. And it makes me think of Rose Chu and reclaiming the narrative and saying, you know what, instead of having other people leading us around by the nose, we need to get back at the table and say, this is the way forward. And we want to work with you. We want to bring community in. We want students to lead. But for too long, the narrative has been taken away from us, and we're trying to play catch up. So spot on, Apryl, spot on. Other thoughts on this? You know, as I said, we're all going to agree. There's nobody on here that's going to go running up saying, no, 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 no. Well, I like the good old days. Let's go backwards.
Walter, I have a thought. Oh, I'm sorry.
John, please.
So, piggybacking on what Benita was saying about community, Kathleen was saying about student ownership, and what Chaunté was saying about really, again, reiterating what Benita was talking about having students be the center of the learning, have the students be the teachers in a way. That really made me also think about how we assess and how we have traditionally assessed. And I know somebody in the comments was also talking about changing the way we assess. And I know standardized tests aren't going anywhere, but I do still think there's an ability, even with standardized tests, to do more digital assessment, project-based assessment, students choosing how they want to show their knowledge, and then aligning that to whatever those standards are that you're teaching. So we could still have that standardized testing that our society is still really fixated on, but yet in terms of preparing students for those tests, doesn't mean that the way we teach has to be exactly like the test. We could be doing more project-based learning. We could be, as Chaunté was speaking about, I was thinking about when students give presentations, what are the audience members doing? Are they providing feedback? Are they looking at commonalities amongst all their presentations? What's similar? What's different? Really being active learners. And that gets to the sense of community. It gets to the sense of problem solving and helping our students to be in control of their learning and what those next steps are. So I hope that folks watching this and my fellow panelists, that we do think about how we can integrate community through assessment and broaden how we look at assessment in the future.
Wow.
Yeah, and I will add to that. Thank you for that, John, because it's reminding me, I was a math teacher, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that math teachers face, you meet kids all the time who hate math. They hate math. They don't know how to do it. Benita.
Yep.
They don't know how to do it. And so trying to combat those narratives,
Yeah.
John, you're talking about like integrating community, but also thinking about, finding identity, right? And authenticity. So one of the things I had the students do every week was they had to find their learning in something like they enjoyed, like an article, a comic book. So they had to go find those concepts in something else and bring it back. So whatever we were learning, and it made them, one, seek out their comprehension, make meaning of it, and also retell it and taking ownership of it. So not me telling them what it was, but them telling me what it was. So thank you, John, for giving that another narrative around that learning, and also something in terms of to be thinking forward a different way.
Benita, how do you respond to all this? The talk about standardized testing and what's going to go away and what's not going to go away. What do you tell educators about this?
Hated it. So so you look, John and Chaunté are correct. Like we're never going to get away from standardized testing. When I work in a micro school and innovative school spaces, we're taking funding from the state. There are mandates, so we do have to test twice or 3 times a year, and we turn those test scores in. We do it differently, so it's not a big deal in those spaces. Where when I was a school teacher of 26 years, I'm stressing, the kids stressing, the teacher stressing, the custodian stressing, everybody running around looking crazy. And so just it shifts the dynamics, but I love what they're both saying, like in preparation.
Yeah.
In teaching, one of the things I always say, and I was in middle school, and I would tell the kids, I said, I've had numerous job interviews, and no one ever asked me my SAT score, ever.
Right.
Okay, no one ever said, did you pass the state 9? What level were you on? Like, no one ever said that. But the things I learned to pass those tests, I still use them as an adult. So that goes back to what you're both saying, like, how do we make it applicable? And we know this generation, let's go ahead and call it what it is, the post-COVID generation. If it doesn't apply to me right now, if it doesn't make sense on how it's going to make sense in my life on a personal level, you've already lost me. Right. And so we have to come back. And I love what Kathleen started with, student advocacy. Like they are asking me why I need to know that again. And I'm like, because it's, and if I don't have an answer, I'm like, I've already lost them. And so we have to be authentic about this. We have to show relevancy. And all of that comes into how we are assessing them. And in the classroom, you can assess how you want, as long as we know it's preparing them for standardized testing. That's not going to go away. I worked in a district, in a state. Is it a state? Not really a state, a city. Y'all know what I mean. I worked in an area where the government is, where it was tied to my paycheck. I'm gonna say it like that. And so now I'm stressing a little bit more. It's tied to my teacher observation. I'm stressing a little bit more. And so we have those things tied to something that impacts our livelihood as an educator. But we still have to, be a maverick in our classroom and say, like Chaunté said, like John said, like, hey, let the kids teach me. Let the kids, grade each other. Let's look at this rubric. I don't, in my class, science boards were banned. I was an English teacher. You better not bring a science board in here and talk about you giving me a book report. You better do like a reading rainbow. Like, we're going to get creative. We were using technology already. We know how to use our or they're not giving us any money. We know how to use those apps.
There you go.
To help us be engaged. And I think that's what we're looking at now, where as the educator, how do I pull them into something different and prepare them for this test, but the test isn't, it's not the end all to be all. My 8th graders going into high school, you know, they needed essay writing. They need to know how to speak to each other. We needed some soft skills, and that's not on our standardized tests. And so I think we just have to learn how to balance, which goes back to, I think April said it, having that support from administrators. And then that goes back to our administrators understanding, you know, how is the culture, the climate of this building? Yes, I'm going to get our kids ready, but sometimes when you walk in, today may be, you know, we just need to work on kindness. Like, you know, today may be, we are writing letters to each other using this email because we don't know how to email. You only know how to text, and you're not going to email me again in a text. They're not the same thing. And so those little things that are not on the standardized test, but are what you need for life.
That is so true. And John, you're a big proponent of this, that, you know, as educators, we got to start embracing all this. We need to embrace the way generations are showing us they're learning and being productive and creative. We need to embrace these new generative technologies that we're all sitting there thinking, how do we even stay on top of it, let alone bring it in for instruction? Any words of wisdom in this context about all of that, that we need to embrace these things?
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, going back to Chaunté's example of presentation.
Yeah.
In my work with teachers and school leaders, I can't tell you how often I'm hearing, but AI is cheating, but AI is cheating, but AI is cheating. But the reality is it's not going anywhere, and the horse has left the barn. And so we need to get over that. I think some of that comes from our fear and our reticence in changing what we're asking students to do, because it's no longer about writing that book report when AI could write that book report in 2 minutes.
Right.
But what if, and this also gets back to that idea of community, what if we have AI generate these book reports on, let's say, different people, and then engage our students in discussion around those book reports that AI produce, maybe at different text levels. So you can also get students at different reading levels, you know, giving them that chance to have an equal voice. So AI can help create those just-in-time resources for students, regardless of where they are in their readiness, so they can have those collaborative discussions, particularly if we're using discussion protocols, which will build community. And then maybe it's also about not just solely focusing on writing communication skills, but student presentation skills and other forms of communication skills. And I'm not saying writing's not important, but maybe they write about the discussion they had about the synthesis of all the biographies they looked at, i.e., what did you notice in all these biographies? What did they all highlight as important in the life of so-and-so? How did they differ from one another? Write about your conversation that you had with your others. So I think if we get creative in how we use AI, we are preparing them to be those problem solvers of tomorrow. We are bringing in community. Now, I'm not saying AI doesn't have its faults. It can be biased, and it can be a crutch. But again, for what we're talking about, all of us here, community, voice, student agency, if it's done right, it will help that.
Thank you. April, how does it resonate with you when we're talking about a content-rich area like the social studies? How do you see AI being embraced?
Yeah, I think what John's saying about like we have to do it right is important. And I think sometimes we are very quick to jump into what's the fastest way to get this directive out and to say that this is the expectation, this is what we're doing, but that's not always the most effective way. Our world of social studies has a lot of stand and deliver sages at the stage who are
Yeah.
storytellers who want to lecture and have students take notes. And they're still transitioning into what does project-based learning mean? What does it mean to release tasks to students? And I think that it's important, though, to find ways to recognize and respect those teachers who are fond of the good old days and to respect what they do bring to the table and start where they're at to then help them problem solve the problems that they're identifying, even if you already know what the solution is to that problem, but respect where they're at and what they do well, and more leading as coaching. And if the funding's being cut for your coaches, sometimes administrators will have to be able to advocate for being coaches in instruction themselves and give that coaching to those teachers because they can buy into it, but it has to be more of a conversation for some than a directive if you're going to, like John said, do it right.
It's so true, and it can't be a memo from central office. The work Mishkat El-Mumin, who's been in the last couple of town halls with us, has said it's got to start now. We got to start doing things now that build up towards 2030. So when we get there, we're running full tilt. And kudos to each of you for the things you're saying. That these are all things we can be doing now. We don't need to wait for someone to give us a directive that this is the new policy or the new trend. Kathleen, you and I are the veterans here. When you hear this stuff, especially when you're thinking about personalizing, and you have some great tools students can use to personalize and understand their own learner profile, what do you see as the potentials for artificial intelligence and apps and the things that are coming into classrooms that is, I think John said, it's already happening. It's not going away. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I think AI, I mean, is really going to change the world, not just our classrooms.
Amen.
The thing is, we're preparing kids for a world that we don't even recognize or we don't even know
Yep.
at this point because it's going to move at a very rapid rate. In education, everything has kind of gone kind of slow, right? I mean, it gets
That's who we are. Yep.
introduced, it gets trained, it gets adopted, it gets a part of the culture or the community in the classroom. But I think that AI will definitely change everything for us.
Yeah.
Adopting, new methods or really getting, teachers to sort of use all these tools. I just remember, so I'm just going to age myself here, but I started my degree program back in 1983 in computers in ed.
Yep.
I really envisioned how computers could really be used in the classroom. And so I'm a person with a lot of imagination, and I had the luxury really of being a computer teacher where no one really knew what you were supposed to do. So,
Right.
so I really had complete charge about what happened in that classroom.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is that now that I moved towards like a personalized learning, and personalized learning started a long time ago for me, back in 2011.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you that the most important thing that we can do for children, for teachers, no matter where you are with AI, is really them to really help them identify and really understand their own identity. And so one of the a quote that I've sort of used for quite a while is that, identity is the core of social and emotional learning.
Yeah.
And so the importance, and so, my work over the last, 20 years is really how do we really empower all learners, the diverse learner? How do we get them to be inclusive, and how do we have them include in that learning environment? And it all comes really down to this really, for each one of them to truly understand who they are as learners. And I can't emphasize that enough. If
Yeah.
one does anything at the beginning of the year, really get your kids to talk about who they are as learners, about the strengths and challenges. I've co-authored 2 books all about this stuff. I've written a lot about it for years.
Yes.
But getting kids to really to know that they're seen and valued. And because your goal as a teacher is to develop relationships with your learners.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's a challenge, and some people would say to me when I was in middle school, well, how do you build relationships with all the kids? Well, the first year I had a full-time class, I had 250 kids that came through my class. And I actually spent the time and I sat down and I talked with every single learner first. Okay.
Yep.
And because I wanted to know that, I wanted them to know that I cared about who they were.
Yeah.
Okay. And those relationships is everything. And it really builds this wonderful inclusive environment when you can get everyone to talk about who they are.
Thank you.
No matter how challenging that sounds, but
Well, yeah.
know.
And for some of us, it's picturing it, imagining it, being able to see what that looks like going forward. But I'm struck by what you're saying and connecting the dots back to April and Chaunté and all around the panel. As educators, do we need to start finding communities to help us make
Mhm.
this shift? I mean, we all have our immediate, April, you have a department. Benita, you have work that you do with a certain set of people. But do we need to start looking beyond those familiar, reliable components in our support system and expand to help us get to the point where we can picture it and take chances and test it out and then build out that skill set, Chaunté?
Yeah, I think so. And it's really odd because it's gonna be the third time I'm making this comment today. Right. And it's really funny because, we have this conversation about meeting people where they are.
Yes.
And it's almost becoming like a buzz phrase
Yep.
for us as educators. But really making this connect dot because also around this idea of personalized learning.
Yes.
And thinking about it because it's come out of this era of digital products, right? And these digital tools can
Yep.
do all of these things to support our students in pathways and you get this wrong and so we give you this
Right.
digitally.
Right.
But one of the things that we have to, even with the AI as a teacher serving students, you still have to tell AI to do what you need it to do, right? Otherwise, AI is going to show its bias or AI is going to feed you something that may not be correct. And
Right.
same thing with this personalized with our digital products, right? There is some backdrop in it that we need for it to provide students what we need it to provide. It has to be programmed. It has to be, there's rosters and things that have to be uploaded, those
Yeah.
types of things. Now it does things that support kids, but in order for it to do what we need it to do, there's still teachers and professionals behind it and it'll go. But sometimes we let it go and it gives us data and we rely so much on that data. And there's a big story behind kids that still needs us as the professional, right? And I appreciate the context that you were giving, Kathleen, because there's still more to the story in this personalized learning journey, right? And so when we're talking about meeting kids where they are, that's still context in this personalized learning journey, right? So even beyond meeting kids where they are, right? The catchphrase, right? How do we continue to fill in the parts of the story? Beyond just looking at the reports and saying, this is what you did with this particular tool, and this is how we're going to manage it, right? Like, what are the other parts to the intervention? What are the other pieces that I am supporting? And I think to your point, Walter, is that a professional network now, and particularly even Benita, when you made the comment about how we are developing teachers, because you now have a generation of teachers who've come in and these digital products are what they know in terms of intervention.
Right.
Right. And even sometimes on the social emotional side of of support as well, not just on the academic side.
Yep.
Right. And so how do we get beyond just, I met them where they are, we had these products meet them where they are, but developing that skill set that allows us to understand the entire story of a student, the bigger picture of a student and their well-being, or what I would call safety, right? Academic, social, and physical safety while they are with us. For that, whole child, right?
There you go.
And
I'm
supporting
sorry.
that
Go ahead,
picture.
Chaunté. I apologize.
Yeah.
No, go
No,
ahead,
I was gonna
Chaunté.
say,
I'm
you know,
sorry.
it's beyond the catchphrase and the buzzword at this point, right?
Yeah.
This personalized journey is beyond that digital tool, right? It supports us, but if we're meeting them, if we are meeting them where they are, we are supporting their entire story, right? This digital product helps us with the academic achievement piece, but then where are we supporting and filling in the other pieces? And we're stepping in with what we know, not just what we see on paper.
Thank you. John, you were going to jump in.
I apologize, Chaunté, but I'm really excited actually about what you're saying. It's what you were saying and what Kathleen was saying as well about that social emotional learning piece. And this isn't coming from me. This is coming from somebody that I interviewed on my podcast. He's a teacher in North Carolina, middle school science teacher, and he's doing a lot with AI. And while he said that he tends to use AI to help create projects and not to grade, so that way he can form those personal relationships with students about their growth and achievement, conferencing with them. That could be one way. But I have talked with other people who do use AI for the earlier, let's say, drafts of writing. And then they come in and have that conversation with students in the final version. How do you think you did on this? How does this piece represent your voice? What would be your next steps? How can I, as your teacher, help you with this? So again, to also April's point, if it's quote unquote used right, and it's not just, we're not solely relying on it for our data saying, oh, that's what it's telling us about our kid. That's it. That's all we need to know. But if we're using it efficiently to take over some of those grading duties at the earlier parts of the production, so that we can have that conferencing with our students, I think that's one way. April and Chaunté and Kathleen, we can build in that SEL piece, because that's what makes, I believe, us important. And AI can't produce that yet, right? So that's one thought. And then all of this just means, I think we have to do a better job. I know it's time consuming, but I think we have to do a better job of creating school ecosystems where we have students leading those conferences.
Yeah.
And that also could get at the social emotional piece and the student agency piece. And again, Chaunté, I apologize before. You excited me in what you said.
She has a tendency to do that, doesn't she? You know, when you read what's being said in industry about the future of work, the SEL piece is huge, because they're projecting that AI is going to be handle so many of the inventory things and bean counting things and you know the things that we've spent our whole careers doing, which will free up people to do other things. But what AI is not going to be able to do, and John, I know you were kind of saying it in jest, but it's not going to be able to have that social emotional piece, that human connection, those ethical decisions, the understanding of context when it's providing information. And so those are the things when you're talking to people in the HR industry who are thinking about what work's going to be like when these students graduate in the next 20 years. They're saying those are the core competencies that they're looking at, that they know are going to have to be in place and well developed. So kudos to you for bringing that out. I do want to say, the time flies. It's already 45 minutes in. If there's a piece, a specific piece that we haven't touched on that is important to you, and you've all been doing a great job of jumping in, so I don't know what that would be, but if there's something we haven't talked about yet, now's the time to throw it into the conversation.
So I think Chaunté started talking about it.
Yep.
And when she was saying it in my head, I was like, release the dragon. The funds are now, that's literally how I be thinking, y'all. The funds are now being released. And I love
Yes.
how and I think Kathleen may have also mentioned it, like, we should have, it should have been two paths. It should have been one path, we may never get this money because we just don't know. And it should have been the other path where if the money drops tomorrow, what are the things we need to do immediately? And that is I guess that's my question to everyone on the panel. Like, if you imagine, because I never want to be in charge like that. If you were in charge, what would be the things? Because I know I live in Memphis and I go between Memphis and Miami. So Miami has about 2 more weeks. Memphis starts on the 4th. And the funds just dropped.
Right.
Okay. And so everything that they had canceled, they are now trying to plug and play.
Yeah.
And 300 teachers are still not in place.
Wow.
And so that is what I would ask, what are we plugging and playing with immediately? Because school, like I said, school starts on Monday.
Mhm.
That's my question to the panel.
Wow.
Did you stump the panel?
No, I think every district probably already, when this was taken away, it was taken away right at July 1.
Yep.
Right. And so every district already had a plan. July 1 is when you expected it to drop.
Well, true.
Right?
Right.
And then boom, it was gone. So there was something they were expecting to do. July 1 happened, and then and Walter, we're back again. And I again commend superintendents because they automatically went into their advocacy. And I just didn't meet one that was not on the right side of that advocacy and trying to get things together for their kids, right?
Yeah.
And so there was already something in place. And, I was in a district just before July 1, and, there was budget A, B, and C, right? Because, it was a question mark already in terms of how things would be funded already. Yeah. And I'm sure, and I was working with a brilliant superintendent, and, and I know that other districts were doing the same thing right now. That was a deep cut.
Yeah.
That $7 billion was a deep cut.
Yep.
So just like in the video I posted this morning, it was, you might be working on from your plan A, you might be working from your plan B. Right. Or you may be imagining, I hope imagining and not reimagining. Right. I hope we're imagining. And that's probably what, and whether it's plan A or plan B, I think today we're probably looking at data.
Yeah.
Right. And just making sure that plan A and plan B still align. Because even though it's almost August 1, we're still looking at staffing.
Yep.
Right. Are we fully staffed? Some places still are not. But some places had already made the decision to begin to pull back positions and regroup. Right. And so everybody's probably looking at their metrics and saying, okay, we did, but we had already probably planned to go and drive because we were planning to move without it. And that today was probably a really deep dive day to day, because we have, and that may also mean that we're probably looking at some spaces where we have a surplus, that might mean that we can't imagine.
Well, you know, when the pandemic hit and we all had to scurry and be very flexible and very adaptive, we were all talking in our own groups about how we hope we didn't go back. That now that we were being forced to do some things differently, that this was going to be a new way forward. Well, we all know what happened as soon as everybody got back to the status quo. So even though this whole stunt happened over the summer with this money and now it's back, my fear is more, does that mean we just go back to the same old, once we figure out how to fill gaps and recover and hit the ground running, is it also an opportunity, as Chaunté suggested, to imagine and to say, okay, yeah, we've got our money, so yeah, these programs are intact for another year, but there's no guarantee after another year. We don't know what's coming with this continual dynamic going on at the federal level. So April in Orlando, what are you hearing as a district person? And do you see that there may be opportunities for some innovation here and some rethinking of some things, or are we going back now that we have our funding to plan A?
Yeah, I think a lot of the messaging that I've been hearing in Central Florida is we're putting people first. So when the cuts happen, we pulled a whole lot of contracts with external vendors and tried to continue to keep as many positions as we could.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that was a compassionate decision that not necessarily was received well by everyone because you only care so much about how it impacts your day to day.
Yeah.
And so I think as we fluctuate in the budget of pulling back, pushing forward, and what do we do with it, I think the communication is key in
Mm-hmm.
terms of why are we prioritizing specific things and how is the leadership going to help you with the things that are gone that you're used to having. What support is there if you are used to using Nearpod for every lesson and now there's no Nearpod available for you? How is someone going to help you out with that? What are the expectations to help you transition there? I think that that's tough to do over the summer.
It
Your,
is.
your teachers aren't really checking their emails to see those messages coming out, and they're just hearing this back and forth and opening their lessons, and there's softwares that are gone. And they're, well, what am I supposed to do now? School starts, and I
Yeah.
have to revamp everything. And that's maybe, like Chaunté said, an opportunity for that imagining, an opportunity to show them what John's talking about with some of these AI features that can help
Yep.
you with some of that grunt work of
Yep.
coming up with these ideas and transitioning. So if we can communicate it as it's a problem that we're sharing, but we're going to imagine some ways that
Yes.
we can move forward together and solve these problems. I think problem solving tends to land better in times of uncertainty instead of just directives.
I love that last statement. I'm typing it down as it's saying that.
And I love what April, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kathleen, and then I'll go after you.
Good.
I love what April's saying about problem solving together. I suppose after we figure out about bringing back who we didn't hire because we didn't know if we had budgets, once that initial start of the year thing is set again, and I know we're a little bit behind because of what's gone on, I would hope, and this relates to what April's talking about, we use the money to develop the processes and systems that help teachers see themselves as the resources. So as April is talking about, well, Nearpod is gone, what do we do? Well, if we invest in those professional learning communities where the inside teachers who
Yep.
have collective knowledge,
Yep.
if we use the money to train them on how to run a PLC, how to collaborate with one another, then if that money goes again, like you're mentioning, Walter, people still have the skill to problem solve, like April's mentioning.
Thank you. Kathleen, what were you going to say?
what's always on my mind is how you recreate these environments. Say if you didn't have any money, I can't remember having all these funds years ago. And then sometimes maybe it just pays to be, go down to the bare bones and figure out what's really needed to create this learner-centered environment. And sometimes it doesn't include more money. But you definitely want to have the right staff to support all the learners and the diversity of learners that are in schools today. I mean, I can recall when there were no assistants in a classroom.
Right.
There were no paraprofessionals. There was really you, okay? And your colleagues. But the work I've done over the last decade is about, and I always think about is how you create these learner-centered environments where we really empower children, okay? I just don't think I've seen a lot of that necessarily, but maybe I've just not been stepping in the classroom all that much. But the most important thing is to create that learner-centered environment, whether you have the funds or not, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom.
I'm of the age that there was just the classroom teacher and 30 of us in the classroom.
Right. So,
and we created, and our classroom was a community where we helped each other.
Yep.
Yeah,
you talked about that at the last town hall, I remember.
Yeah, but the thing is that I'm older than all of you sitting here, so I've had a totally different experience in education. But I've always been innovative and sort of broken the barriers along the way. And sometimes teachers, kicking and screaming that they have to learn how to use tools in the classroom. But but the thing is, I was part of that introduction to technology in the classroom and embraced it from day one, from the mid 80s on. So, but the thing is that let's never forget why we're there, right, in the classroom, and how we can create a learner-centered environment where all kids feel included and cared for.
Amen. Benita, any last words? Anything we haven't covered that you want to say?
I love this. Thank you for space and opportunity.
Absolutely.
To have colleagues to come in and just to share and I'm always going to stress that people who are not in the education atmosphere to come into our atmosphere to understand what we're talking about before you start bashing us.
Right.
Because this week I've had numerous people keep asking me why the teachers asking for school supplies. And I've had to literally break it down for them and show them a picture of what my classroom looks like when I first arrived.
Right.
And then show them a picture of what it looks like once I pay and we go hunting and donors choose and GoFundMe. Like we do all the things. And then the parents and the guardians and the adults calm down. So I just want to make sure that we remember that we're a village. And in the village, the elders are teaching the young are teaching the elders, and we're all learning. And that is how we have to continue to be when we are raising the next generation. It takes the entire village. That's all.
It's so true. And we're our own best advocates when we have those conversations. But we assume people know, and they assume they know. So I want to thank you all. It's been a quick hour. We brought out a lot of excellent ideas and continue to advance this idea of what this is going to look like. We'll get this recording processed. We'll get it out. We'll have a phase 3 summary and get that out for commentary. And I invite all of you to jump into that document when you see it, because it'll be, the first kind of transposing of this conversation. But I'm sure there'll be things that you can enrich and add to make it everything it can be. So thank you again. I know you're busy. I know this is important that you made the time for this, and I'm so grateful to you. And we will talk again soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. It was great seeing you all.
Good seeing everybody.